So let's begin by setting up our project first. So I've created an empty Unity project and named it Escape because this is the game we are going to create. So let's change our build settings to Android and we'll remove our sample scene and let's change our build setting first. Then we'll create the new scene. So it will take a couple of seconds and it should be done soon. So it is processing and importing. Busy for 37 seconds, 38, and it should be done. So our project has been changed to Android. Now let's create our new scene and we'll save this scene as the gameplay as this is going to be our only scene that we are going to use for the game. So it is recompiling the scripts. Let's see how much time does it take. Reload. Okay, so now the scripts has been recompiled. So let's create our new scene, and we are going to save this scene inside our scenes folder, and let's rename it to gameplay. And we'll add it to the build, and we'll delete our sample scene. We are not going to need it. And let's set up our project settings. So we'll go inside project settings, and we'll import the TextMesh Pro as we do it every time. And it's just a default package, we are not going to use it, but suppose you want to add UI and stuff, so always have it at start. And we'll set the naming convention to use the underscore. Now let's set up our packages. So we'll remove all the unnecessary packages so it doesn't take much time to recompile all the scripts. So let's update the Visual Studio Editor, and also the package removal and addition will take a bit of time. So let's see what packages we are going to have and what else do we need to remove. We don't need the Visual Studio Code Editor. If you are using VS Code Editor, just remove the Visual Studio Editor. And that is also for JetBrains, so we are also going to remove that. And you should have the package for whatever editor you are using, or it won't suggest the autocorrect. And let's also remove the version control. We are not going to manage any version control, but for this project we are not going to use it. But for bigger projects we may need to build the project in steps, and sometimes some errors may occur and you may want to revert it to previous version. You can, and this version control is for Plastic SCM. It is good for games, but if you are familiar with GitHub, then GitHub is the go-to, and I use GitHub a lot, so uh, there is no need for version control. I'll manage it through my Git. What is it? GitHub desktop. There is also no need to use the CLI. You can just directly have all the things there, and no need to remember multiple keywords, scripts, codes, or whatever you want to type. So everything is updated and our project is set up. Now let's create all the files and the folders we are going to use. So first of all, we'll bring in all our resources. This is just the tiles we are going to use, and we'll directly bring in the resources folder. So it includes all the three tiles, and they are already previously edited, so we don't need to do anything. Now let's create all the folders. So the first folder we are going to need is the prefabs folder and the scripts folder. And after we have the prefabs and the scripts, I think we won't need any colors. Yeah, so there is no need for the editor folder. And let's create our scripts. So the first script we are going to need is our game manager. and we are going to have a scriptable object script for our level, so we'll just directly call it level. We are not going to level data or anything else. And the final script we are going to use is going to be for the game piece, so it is going to be attached to all of the pieces. And instead of, let's delete it, we are going to call it game piece, not game pieces. So let's create our C hash script for our game piece. And after that, we are also going to need our generator folder where we are going to generate our levels. And again, it is going to have a couple of scripts. So first thing we'll need is our scene. So let's create a new scene, and we are going to call this screen as a level generator. And we already saved it. We don't need to add it to the build, as it's not going to be included in the final game. It is just going to be needed for just playing the game. And the generator is also going to have its own script. So it is going to have the level piece script and the level generator script, similar to our game manager and the game piece. But here we are going to call it level generator. And is the naming correct? Yeah. And finally, our level piece script. So again, it is for the game piece, but here we are going to call it level piece. So that should be it for the project setup. We have created all the scripts, all the scenes, and all the resources. And in the next part, we'll start by creating all the prefabs that we are going to need. So let's go to the next part. So in the previous part, we set up our project, and in this part, we are going to create all the prefabs, and we'll also create our level scriptable object. So let's do that. So the first game object we are going to need is our game manager. And our game manager is going to have the game manager script attached. Pretty simple. And let's change our camera color to pure white. Now we are going to need our game piece and the background. So let's add our background first, and we'll just call it BG. And it is going to have a sprite render script attached. We'll set its ordering layer to -12, and we'll set the draw mode to slice. And the sprite we are going to use is the black sprite, and let's change its size to 10 cross 10, the camera size to 8. So this should be our background, and we are going to save this as a prefab. We'll need to change its size according to the level size. So we'll save this as a prefab, and after that we are going to need our game piece. So it's just an empty game object, but it is going to have the game piece script attached and also the block. So let's create an empty first for the block, and let's go inside the scene view. So as you can see, we have the game piece at the 0 0 position, and there is our block. It is going to have a sprite renderer, and the sprite renderer sprite we are going to use is our blue sprite. So that's we are going to use for our blue block. The default blocks, our win block, I'm just using the red sprite, so nothing too complicated. And we'll set the exposition to 1.5. And yeah, so this is going to be our default block. Its order in layer is going to be 0. We'll attach a box collider 2D, and we'll set a trigger. It needs to detect the click, so that's why the box collider 2D with a trigger is needed. And we'll save this as a prefab. So let's save it as a prefab. So this is our game piece. Now let's duplicate. We don't need to duplicate. What we are going to do now is just change the sprite to use the tile red, and it is going to be our win piece, and we'll create an original prefab and we'll rename it as win piece. So both of them are completely similar, except for the sprite. We could just do it by code, but I just created a new prefab, and you can save a little bit of time. So that was for our prefabs, and we are not going to need anything else. And now what we need to do is create our level scriptable object. So it is going to store our level data. So what level data needs to be stored? So let's go inside Visual Studio, and we are going to go inside our level, and it is going to inherit from the scriptable object class. And let's create a set menu, and our file name is going to be level, and the menu name we are going to use is level. So what data are we going to need? So we are going to have a public integer for the rows and the columns, and after that we are going to have a public piece. So we'll need to create our serializable class, which is going to be for storing our pieces. So we'll call it piece, and each piece is going to have an ID. So we are going to need the ID for just it was actually, I think we are going to need it when we generate all the pieces. So it needs the ID to differentiate every other piece, or we cannot just directly save it. And we are going to have a boolean for checking if it is vertical. So vertical is going to have its own boolean, and then we are going to have the size. So we can just directly spawn them, and where we need to spawn them, so we are going to have vector to int, which is going to be the start index, and this start index is going to uh, denote in row and the column manner. So we are going to use like grid position, which is the row and the column, and when converted to x and y, the rows will be converted to y coordinate, and the column coordinate will be converted to the x coordinate. So we are going to have a win piece and our list of pieces, which are going to be our gain pieces, but we'll just directly call it pieces. So this is our level scriptable object, and we will need to create it inside Unity and save it as a prefab, because for now we don't have the generator method of editing the level and spawning it. So uh, at the end they are just numbers, so we can just directly set them up. So let's go inside prefabs, and we are going to create the level, and we are going to call it level. So as you can see, level scriptable object is generated. Now we need to set the values for the levels. So the rows and columns are going to be 5, and for the win piece the ID is going to be 0, and false to 2 and 1. So the size is going to be 2, and the start position is going to be 2 and 1. And we are going to have 5 pieces. So let's add one piece first, and the first piece is going to have ID of 1, and it is going to be a vertical piece. Its size is going to be 2, and position is going to be 3 and 1. So 3 and 1 denotes to the third row and the first column, so it should be somewhere at yeah, so it's just the coordinate of 3 and 1. And next we are going to have ID of 2, and again it's going to be a vertical piece. Size is going to be 2, and position is going to be 0, vertical piece at the start. And next we are going to have one more vertical piece. Let's change its ID to 3. again its size is going to be 2, but it's going to be at 2 and 3. So the third column and the second row, so it should be blocking our win piece. And let's create our final two pieces. So id is going to be 4, and this one is going to be horizontal, so its vertical is going to be false. The size is going to be 3, and 3, no, the size is going to be 2, and the position is going to be 4. And after that we are going to have our final piece. So let's change its id to 5, and false, size is going to be 3, and position is going to be 0 and 2. So it should be at the 0th row and second column. If you convert it to x and y coordinate, it should be almost below. And we'll see how it's going to look in the next part, as we'll need to spawn all the pieces. And we have created our level and saved all the pieces. All the prefabs are ready, and in the next part we are going to do is spawn all of our pieces and set up the initialization for our game piece. So let's go to the next part. So in the previous part, we spawned our prefabs. Now we are not spawned. We created our prefabs. Now we need to spawn them in the grid and set up the camera and the background. And most of the part we are going to do is scripting and assigning all the variables. So let's just directly go to the scripting part. So first, let's start with the simplest script, which is our gameplay script. It just has an initialization function, and then we'll start with our game manager script. So let's delete our start and the update methods, and let's see what. So we are going to have a serialized field for our private sprite renderer, and this is going to be for our piece renderer. We need to change its size, and we also need to change the size of our box collider. So we are going to need our piece collider, and after that, let's hide an inspector. We are going to have a public boolean for its vertical, and hide an inspector public integer for size. Hide an inspector public vector2 integer for our current grid position, and public vector2 for our current position. So when we want to change the position, we are going to change the current position, which in turn will change its uh, system.not numerics. We need a default one. So let's first delete this vector. Mm, we So we are going to change the current position, as the transform dot position changes after the update, and we are going to change the position when the update function is called. So we need to detect the original position, which will only be detected after update. So we are going to save it as a variable. Now let's create an initialization function, which is going to take a piece and spawn it. So our current grid position is going to be piece.start. So the grid position is saved. Its vertical is going to be piece.isVertical. Size is going to be piece.size. And our current position is going to be new vector2, and we'll set it current grid position dot y plus 0.5, as it starts at 0, and similarly current grid position dot x plus 0.5. And after that we need to change its size. So if it is vertical, then we are going to scale it in the y direction. So piece renderer dot transform dot local position, we need to change the local position, and it is going to be equal to new vector3 and 0, and we'll multiply it by size minus 1, and is multiplied by 0.5, so it is going to displaced in the y coordinate as it is vertical. And after that we'll set piece render dot size is going to be equal to new vector 2, and the y coordinate is going to change. Similarly, for our piece collider dot size is going to be 1 in size, and after that we are going to do similar, but instead of the x coordinate, the changes are going to be in the x coordinate. So previously it was in the y coordinate, so size minus capital size minus 1. And similarly here we are going to use size and 1, and here also size and 1. So this is going to be the initialization function, and now we need to spawn our game piece inside our game manager. So again, it is going to be pretty simple, as we just need to pass the game piece and create all the variables. So let's create one more function which is going to be for updating the position, and here we are just going to pass the offset, and our current position, not current grid position, current position plus is equals to, if it is vertical then we are going to pass the up, else it is going to be right, and then we'll multiply it by offset, and our transform dot position is going to be set to current position, but our transform dot position will change after update. That's why we save it at the current position. Now let's go inside our game manager. The spawning methods are pretty simple, and mm, let's start scripting our game manager. So first thing we are going to need is our game manager instance. Don't know if we need or not, but it's always good to create it. And after that we'll start creating all the variables. So let's create a serialized field, and we are going to get the level. After that we are going to have a serialized field for our background prefab. So we need to get the sprite renderer, and we'll call this background prefab, and we are going to have serialized field private, and this is going to be for our game piece, and we are going to have our piece prefab and serialized field private game piece for our win prefab. And after that let's create our private variables. So first one is going to be hash game finished. We need to store all the list of our game pieces and also our win piece. So private game piece and win piece, and we also need to store our current piece. Private vector 2 for storing the current position and the previous position for the offset. So current position and previous position. After that we are going to have a private list of vector 2 for storing the offsets. So we need to detect if it is changing the direction, so we can uh, just do it like that. So we are going to store all the offsets, and as we are going to use it inside the update function, so the value is going to be small. So what we are going to do is whenever we move or click the mouse position, we'll store all those tiny offsets inside our list, and we'll take the latest 20 or 30, which should be around half a second, as the game goes on for like 60 frames a second, and we'll calculate which direction is it. We cannot just directly calculate if it is greater than or less than 0. We need to check if it is moving in a particular direction for a particular period of time. So we are going to save it there, and as game finished is going to be false, and we are going to spawn our level. Now let's create our spawn level function. So private void spawn level, and first we'll set up our background. So we need to spawn our background first. So sprite renderer bg is going to be instantiate of our background prefab, and after it is spawned we'll set its size. So background dot size is going to be new vector 2, and we'll pass the level dot columns as the x size is going to be the number of columns and the y size is going to be the number of rows, and we need to change its position. Transform dot position is going to be new vector 3, and we'll pass the level dot columns comma level dot rows and 0, and we'll multiply it by 0.5. And similarly we'll set up our camera, but we'll also need to change its size, and the camera is positioned at z coordinate of -10, so we need to pull out the camera's position. Camera dot main dot orthographic size is going to be equal to mathf dot max, and level dot columns and level dot rows, and we'll multiply it by 1.6f, and then we are going to add 2f. So these are experimental values. You can have the magnification or size however you like. So after it is set up, we need to get its position, and we need to change its x and y coordinates. So let's create a vector 3. Cam pose is going to be equal to camera.main.transform.position cam pose dot x, and the x coordinate is going to be level dot columns multiplied by 0.5f, and similarly cam pose dot y is going to be level dot rows multiplied by 0.5f, and finally our camera's position camera.main.transform.position is going to be equal to cam pose. So this should set up our camera and background. Now let's add all the values inside the serialized field so it does not show any error. So that's the level. We have the background prefab, the game piece, and our win piece. And also set it up inside our game piece. So it is going to directly get it from the block. And now what should happen if there aren't any errors? We should be able to see it spawning. So our background and camera should have positioned at the center. So it is positioned at the center, and instead of landscape, we set it to portrait. Then you can see like it is working fine. So instead of 1.6f, let's make it 1.2f, and let's see how it's going to look. So our background is spawned. Now we need to spawn all our game pieces. So our win piece, and we just need to initialize them and save it to our respective variables. There's nothing complicated going on, as you already created the initialization function, and it is already spawning them at their original position. Mm, do we need to spawn? Mm. So we can. Nah, I'm just going to follow what I've done before. Maybe it will be a little bit lengthy, but I'm not going to do any optimization. So I spawned the position inside the game manager. What could I have done is directly spawn them inside the initialization function, but let's just leave it as it is. So we need to set our win piece, which is going to instantiate of our win prefab. Then we can just directly initialize it. So win piece dot init, and it is going to be level dot win piece. and we are going to add our win piece to our game pieces. So game pieces dot add win piece, and before that we need to initialize our game pieces. So our game pieces is going to be a new list, and we need to set our win pieces position. So let's create a vector 3 and we'll call it spawn pose, and it's going to be new vector 3. And did it use system? No, it don't need system.numerics. So our spawn position is going to be a new vector 3, and the values we are going to pass is for the x coordinate we are going to pass the column value for our win piece. So level dot win piece dot start, and we'll pass the y, and we need to add 0.5f, and after that comma 0 level dot win piece dot start dot x plus 0.5, and it should spawn at the correct position. kd kd kd. So it should spawn at the correct position. Now we are going to spawn our rest of the pieces. So we'll call this spawn all pieces, and for each where we'll call it piece inside our level dot pieces. We'll first create our game piece, which is going to be called temp, and we'll instantiate our piece prefab, and similarly we'll initialize the temp dot init with our piece, and we'll add it to the game pieces, and we also need to change its position. So our spawn position is going to be new vector 3, and for the x position we are going to pass piece dot start dot y, and we'll add 0.5 for the y position, x plus 0.5 and 0, and it should spawn it. Now we need to change its position. So temp.transform.position is going to be our spawn position, and it should be done, and that should be it for our spawning. Now let's go inside Unity and let's see if it didn't create any errors. So all the errors are fixed if there were any, and if it crashes, our in piece position was changed. So why did that happen? Okay, so we didn't initialize the win piece position. So win piece dot transform dot position is going to be spawn position, and that should fix it. So let's go inside Unity and let's see if all our pieces are spawned. And in the next part, we'll start moving all of these pieces. So it's going to be one simple, it should be completed in one part. So let's go to the next part. So we spawned our prefabs. Now we need to detect the input and move all the pieces. So most of the part is going to be inside our game manager, and that's the only script. So let's go inside game manager, and we'll start by creating the simplest functions, and then we'll piece them up. And let's see which is going to be our first function. So first we are going to, how we are going to win. So it is going to check win. So how we are going to win. So it is going to depend on the win piece. So for win piece dot current grid pose, and if it is y coordinate is plus win piece dot size is less than level dot columns. So that means we are going to return. So if our win piece size is 2 and we have 5 columns, and if our win piece is at the first, second, and third column, then it is not going to be less than. Then that means it is going to win because it can directly move to the winning position, which should be to the right. But if it is not at the third column, but at the first or the second column, I mean the first, second, or the third column, then the grid post coordinate is going to be 0, 1, or 2. And they are going to be less than our level dot columns, which is going to be 5, and we are not going to win. So that was a pretty simple win condition here, nothing too complicated. As game finished is going to be true. And we'll start the coroutine for the game finished, FINISHED. And it's just going to be a simple enumerator where we are just going to wait for 2 seconds, and then we'll restart the scene. So yield return new, wait for seconds, and we are going to wait for 2f. And after that we'll use unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene, and we are going to load the 0th scene. So that was a pretty simple function, and when we are going to check, we'll see that afterwards. And then we are going to have a private bool for is valid position, is valid pos, and we are going to pass a vector 2int of pos, so it is going to get the grid position. So return our x and the y coordinates should be greater than equal to 0, and our x and the y coordinate should be less than level dot rows, and our y coordinate should be less than level dot columns. So pos dot y should be less than level dot columns. And after that we need to check if we are moving in the opposite direction. So it is going to depend on the offset. So as you can as I already told before, we cannot just directly check if we are moving left or right. We need to calculate over a period of time, and we saved it as a list. So our result is going to be equal to 0, and for int I is equals to 0, I less than offsets dot count result plus is equals to offsets of I. And after that we'll get the value, which should be of our current piece is vertical. Then we'll get the y value, else we are going to get the x value. And if our mathf dot abs of our value is greater than 0.2f, which should be around 1/5 of the part, then we are going to return if value is less than 0. So it should be at negative 0.2f, and we need to check if it is moving in the opposite direction, not in the forward or the backward direction. So, and here there is a problem. If we are going to start from 0, then it is just directly going to calculate from the starting position. But what we need is mathf.max of 0 till offsets dot count minus 20. So if there are less than 20 counts, then it is going to start from 0. But if there are more than 20 counts, then it is going to take in the latest 20 offsets, and that's simple. Moving opposite, and let's create a private boolean for can move piece. So, and we'll pass a vector 2int of our piece grid position. So when can we move? So list of vector 2int and our piece position is going to be equal to new list of vector 2int, and we are going to add our current piece dot size and piece positions dot add piece grid pose plus what we need to check is if our current piece dot is vertical, then we are going to get the right. If it is vertical, then we are going to get the right, and it is in the terms of the grid position. So right should be 1 and 0, and vertical as x coordinate, so that's why it is right. And up, or if it is horizontal, so up is going to be change in column. Yeah. So if it is horizontal, then it is going to be change in columns, and we need to multiply it by I. And after that, we need to check for each where pause in our piece position. If any of them is invalid, then if is not valid, pause, or if our piece collision and we are colliding there, so position dot x and position dot y, then we are going to return false. That means we cannot move there, just stop it. Else at the end we are going to return true. That means we didn't collide with anything. And after that, everything else is going to be inside the update function, and we can start it. So can move piece detects the collision is moving opposite, just calculates the positive negative value, as we just need the latest 20 values, valid position and check win. Pretty simple. Now let's go inside the update function, and first thing we are going to check if the game is finished, then we are going to return. Next we will get the mouse position, and it's going to be camera dot main dot screen to world point of input dot mouse position, and after that we'll convert it to vector 2 and we'll call it mouse pose 2D, and it's going to be new vector 2 of mouse pose dot x and mouse pose dot y. And then we'll do a raycasted 2D raycast, and it's going to be physics 2D dot raycast, and we'll pass our mouse pose 2D and in the direction of 0. And after that we'll check if our input dot mouse button down of 0, then mm, mm, if we didn't hit anything, or if we didn't hit a piece, which should be checked by dot collider dot transform dot parent dot try get component, and we can out our current piece. So if it is not, then we are going to return, but if it is, then our current piece should be saved. Then we'll set our current position to be equal to mouse pose 2D and our previous position to be equal to current position. I mean, both are same. Then we are going to calculate the collision. So calculate collision, which is our 2D grid, and our piece collision is going to be new boolean, and we are going to pass the level dot rows and level dot columns. We are going to use grid coordinates here. And first we need to set everything to level dot rows for int j is equals to 0, level dot columns. I think we can pass a default value. So boolean does, nah, just leave it. So we'll set piece collision of I and j to be equal to false. And after that, we will fill each of the pieces. So for each piece, which is going to be piece inside our game pieces. So our game piece, we are going to fill it. For int I is equals to 0, I less than piece dot size, piece collision, is going to be equal to true. So we are going to collide there. And what is going to be equal to true? So for the x coordinate, we'll set piece dot current grid pose dot x plus if our piece dot is vertical, then that means there's going to be change in row. So we'll pass the x coordinate, and similarly comma piece dot current grid pose dot y plus if our piece is vertical, then instead of changing the x coordinate, we are going to change the y coordinate. So it is going to set up the collision matrix. And finally, after that, we are going to set up our current grid piece. So for int I is equals to 0, I less than current piece dot size. And here instead of piece, we are going to use the current piece. Similarly, our current piece, and finally our current piece. So it is going to set up our collision matrix and save our current piece. It is also going to save the position, and if we are not detecting anything, then we are not going to do anything. And that we can check offsets is going to be new list. So when we detect a new click, then it is going to have a new list of offsets, control K and control D. Else if our input dot get mouse button of 0, so we are dragging it. So what would happen when we are going to drag it? So it is going to change its position, and we don't need to do anything else, but for we need to detect if it is moving in the horizontal or vertical direction where we need to move. The offset position passing is also going to change. So let's first set our current position to be equal to our mouse position. Then we'll calculate the offset to be equal to current position minus previous position. We'll add it to the offsets, and after that we'll check if is moving opposite is going to be is moving opposite, and there's some naming convention error here, so we'll move. And if we are moving in the opposite direction, if our current piece is vertical, then we need to first let's get the piece position, which should be equal to our current piece dot current position. Is the current position public? No, it is not. So we are going to get its current position, and after getting its current position, we'll update piece pose dot y is will add. If we are moving in the opposite direction, then we'll add negative 0.5, else we are going to add plus 0.5. So it will set us up a boundary if we are like close to current piece. Yeah, so it will just set us up a boundary, and we will create our piece grid position, piece grid pose, and it is going to be equal to new vector 2. It is going to be a vector 2 int, and this also needs to be a vector 2 int, and the x and the y coordinate are going to be mathf dot floor to int, and we are going to pass the piece pose dot y, because we are converting it into grid position, and similarly method dot float int of piece pose dot x. And if we cannot move piece, and we are going to pass our piece grid position, then we are going to return. We don't need to do anything else. We'll set our current grid position to be equal to our piece grid position, and we are going to update the position passing our offset. So here we are going to pass the y, and if it is vertical, then that, but if it is not, then similarly, everything is going to be same except for our piece position dot x. So pretty simple, nothing to do. And here, instead of using offset dot y, we are going to use offset dot x. And finally, if we have released it, then else if input dot get mouse button up of 0, and our current piece is not equal to null. We need to also add when we are detecting it, and our current piece is not equal to null, or it will start detecting at weird cases, and there would be a null reference error, as it would not have hit anything, and we will be accessing our current piece, which is null. So we'll directly set our current piece dot transform dot position to be equal to a new vector3, and it is going to be current piece dot current grid pose dot y plus 0.5, and current piece dot grid current grid pose dot x plus 0.5. So we just need to change the position, nothing too difficult, and the final coordinate is going to be 0. And after changing its position, we will set our current piece to null, our current position to 0, and also our previous position to 0, and we need to check for the win. So supposing we didn't create any errors inside any of our scripts, so we are just going to calculate the collision, saving the offsets. If it is moving the opposite direction, then we are going to add positive and negative f, and as you can see, it is pretty simple, nothing too complicated. And it is simple because we already did like 6 7. This is going to be our seventh puzzle based grid game, and we are almost familiar with every method that is we can use to create all of our games. So let's now go inside Unity, and let's see if our game crashes, because that's a good part, and we should be able to like correct our errors, and let's see if it crashes or not. So we should be able to move our pieces, but they are not moving. So why are they not moving? We need to detect that. Our has game finish should be false at start. Yeah, it is false. So there is no problem there. Input dot get mouse button down of 0. There are not any errors. Our game piece collider size is changed. Okay, so let's save our game manager, and let's see where we are getting the error. So let's first hit save, and so nothing is happening right now. Why it is not happening? So input dot get mouse button down of 0 if not hit. Transform hit dot collider dot transform dot parent. So let's use debugs, and the first debug we need to check is if we are hitting anything. So what we will do is we'll debug.log our current position. So if it is not getting past this loop, that means it didn't hit. And why it didn't hit, we need to fix it. So yeah, So it did hit, but we are not able to do anything else here. So our current piece is set up, but it is not moving. And why it should not be moving? Maybe we didn't pass the current piece dot update pose game piece update pose. If we are passing the offset, then we'll set it to the current position. Not any errors there. If not can move piece, then we are going to return. So why is it not moving? Hmm. So the only thing we need to check if our movement function is called. So we can check that. Yeah, I got the error. I got the error. That's pretty simple error, but you won't be able to check it. So our current position is set here, and our previous position is also equal to current position. And we need to update our previous position, and there would be some issues. Yeah. So that is the one line that was missing. So our previous position is going to be equal to our current position, and that's just one of the bugs. And let's see if we can move it. No, we still cannot move it. Nah, we cannot move it. We cannot move it. So where could the problem be? Greater than equal to 0. Check when. Let's go inside Visual Studio and let's debug it piece by piece. So we are setting the x and the y coordinate to be true. So if it is vertical, then if it is vertical, then vertical horizontal, maybe that would be issue. Where is calculate collision? Calculate I00 I is going to be equal to true. I0 and 0 I. X and Y piece collision of current grid pose dot X. Hmm. So let's see if we can even move one of the pieces. No, we cannot move any of the pieces. If input dot get mouse button down of 0, let's not debug log the current position. We'll also not check. So offsets dot add offset if it is moving in the opposite direction. Let's check for a particular piece. So let's check for a horizontal piece. Uh, we are going to get the piece position. So let's use the debug.log piece position and debug.log piece grid position. Mhm. So if it goes there, it is not going there. Yeah. We need to move horizontal pieces. So 2.5 and 0.5. So it is correct. There is problem with our collision matrix, but it is not showing any errors. So where would be the problem be? So our not can move piece, then we are going to return. We are passing the piece grid position. So we have passed the I and the X. And let's can move piece, new list. We are going to get the grid position. If it is vertical, then right. If it is horizontal, then up. And if it is not a valid position or if it is colliding, then we are going to return false, or else it is going to return true. So it should have written false somewhere here. And there was a problem. Yeah, I got the problem. So what we need to do was remove collision on our current piece. So this needs to be false here because it is not going to collide with itself. It is going to remove from the collision. That needs to be turned off. So as you can see, pretty simple mistake, but cost us a lot of time. And that's why we create the code step by step and not like me recording for a tutorial and just adding everything at start. And now I think it should be fixed. It should be fixed. And let's see. So we can move the piece up and down, and we can also move this piece here. Index out of bounds array. Yeah. And we can also move the piece here. We can move this piece here. Let's move this piece here. Move it here. Move it here. We'll do something about it. And we can move it here. And there is index out of bound array. And okay, so let's have that out of bounds appear again, and we'll see where it is causing. So it is causing at 178. Can move piece, piece grid pose. Can move piece, piece grid pose. If okay, 178, 146. If is valid, if it is not valid, or piece collision of position.x and position.y. If it is not valid, then why it is showing such errors? Why? Greater than equal to 0, greater than equal to 0, less than level dot columns, not, or. So it should not do that. Where position in piece position, if it is not valid position or piece collision, then we are going to return false. So if it is true, then so it is valid position. It is going to check for the next part. If it is not valid, then it should directly go. But if it is valid, why did it cause the error? Hmm. Dot size new. One more bug. Let's see. Is it just causing error here or? Yeah, so it is causing error for everything, not just that one. And let's see why it is getting an index out of bounds. So there should be problem with negative zero point 0.5 and positive zero point 0.5. So we are passing the floor to int, and we are moving in the opposite direction, and that should be a negative value here, so it should turn false. It should not go there. So if it is not a valid position, or so index out of bounds. Index out of bounds. Piece grid position. Piece grid position. piece position dot add, piece position dot add 178. So the error is only happening here. Greater than equal to 0. Yeah, it is here. As you can see, minor problem, but created a major error. And now everything should be fixed and everything should be a valid position. And yeah. So what the problem was inside our is valid position. So dot x and dot y interchange. Now let's go inside Unity and our gameplay loop should be finished. So let's move past, no problems. Let's move here, here, here. And this is our escape game. We cannot click anything. And that was one more game completed for our puzzle playlist. And in the next part, we'll start creating our generator. So we'll need to assign different keyboard bindings to do different things. And we'll see that in the next part. So in the previous part, we created our gameplay scene, and as you can see, it is already loaded. We can just directly finish this game. Now what we need to do is create our own levels, and we are going to do that inside our level generator scene. So it is going to start editing our level. So we need to directly modify these values, but we need to also visualize them and we need to assign buttons to change those values. So we are going to do that inside our level generator scene. So this is our default level and let's duplicate our prefab. So background is also going to be needed here and we'll just rename it as background. And similarly, our GIMP is also going to be needed. We are going to rename it as game piece, but but instead of having the game piece script, we are going to have the level piece script. And similarly, we can duplicate our game piece, rename it to win piece, and let's click on our win piece. And for the block sprite, we are going to use our red sprite. So these are going to be the prefabs and the scripts we'll be using. Now let's spawn all of our prefabs depending on our level. So we'll need to start scripting and let's open up our level generator and level piece. And we'll start with the simplest of the scripts, which is our level piece script, and it is going to be completely similar to our game piece script. And let's copy everything and let's paste this inside our level piece and let's see what changes and what everything else we are going to remove. So it has public. Why it is using not public, we are going to use hidden inspector and we are going to have a public integer for an id and is vertical size and our current gate position. Current position is not going to matter. We are not going to use any updates, so we also don't need to change the current position. And everything else is going to remain completely similar. Now, let's go inside our level generator and it is going to be similar to our game manager script. So let's create our public static level generator instance and our public static int and it is going to be piece id and it is going to start from 0. Let's create serialized field private and for rows. Serialized field private and for columns, serialized field private level for level, and serialized field private sprite renderer for our background prefab, serialized field private, and this is going to be our level piece and we are going to have our piece prefab and serialize field private level piece win prefab. And after that we are going to have a private bool for is start piece private level piece for our win piece, so we are going to save it, and private level piece for our current piece. And after that, let's go inside the wake function. First we are going to set the instance to this. After that we'll set the start piece to true, and we are going to create the level if it does not exist, and finally spawn our level. So we are going to create both of the scripts here, and let's start by creating our level. So private void create level, and first if our level dot if our rows is equals to level dot rows, then we are going to return, and also our columns is equals to level dot columns. So if both are same, then we are going to return, as we need to create a new script. And where is the error? This one, yeah, we'll create it. And after that we need to set up the values. So level dot rows is going to be equal to rows, level dot columns is going to be columns, level dot pieces is going to be a new list of piece, and our win piece is going to be a new level piece. Not that win pieces, level dot win piece is going to be a new level piece, and we are going to save it. Editor utility dot set dirty, and we are going to save our level. And after that we are going to spawn, and hmm, hmm, hmm. So we'll create our private void spawn level, and inside our spawn level we are going to set up the background. So our sprite renderer, I mean, we can just directly copy paste it from our game manager. Both are similar. So set up the background, copy, and then paste, and set up the camera, copy, and then paste. And we can also copy our spawn all pieces. So for each, copy and then paste. So it created some problem. I mean, nah, we will need to do it individually. So first let's spawn our win piece, and whenever we are going to change the value for our win piece, we are going to spawn it, and we'll create a new function. So private void spawn win piece. So our win piece is going to be instantiate, and we are going to instantiate our win prefab. And after we have instantiated, we'll set the spawn position to be equal to new vector 3, and our win piece dot transform dot position is going to be spawn position, level dot win piece dot id is going to be equal to 0, and finally we need to initialize our win piece. So win piece dot init, and we'll pass our win piece, which should be inside our level. And after that we need to set the position to be perfectly accurate. So it should be level dot winpiece dot start dot y plus 0.5 comma level dot winpiece dot start dot x plus 0.5 comma 0. So this is going to be your winpiece. Update game piece, update winpiece, spawn game piece, private void. Okay, update start piece. Hmm, hmm, So it is going to spawn the win piece. And after spawning the win piece, we are going to spawn all of our pieces. And for int I is equals to 0, I less than level dot pieces dot count. Let's get our piece. Piece is going to be level dot pieces of I. Piece dot id is going to be equal to piece id plus plus. Level dot winpiece dot id is going to be equal to 0. And after that, we are going to have level dot pieces of I is equals to piece. Vector 3 spawn position is going to be equal to new vector 3. Pass the piece dot start dot y plus 0.5 piece dot start dot x plus 0.5 and 0. And after that we are going to spawn. So level piece, our temp is going to instantiate our piece prefab, and temp.transform.position is going to be equal to spawn position. And finally we are going to initialize with our piece. So it should spawn our piece and it should spawn all of our levels. We are not going to go inside the update function, so we'll see what we need to do later. So just the same initialization, just the setting of values is going to be different. W and S we are increasing and decreasing. And C, so remove ID is equals to -1, where we need to remove. C is for delete. X is for spawning the horizontal one. Z is for spawning the vertical one. And 0, when we click, we are going to select a piece. And date game piece, if we less space, then we are going to switch to start. I mean, everything's pretty simple. There is nothing to complicate. So first thing we are going to do is update our start pieces. So for everything to work, we need to create our level generator. And let's go inside Unity. Let's assign all the variables. So it should be inside the game piece. Similarly for our win piece. And also for our level generator. So we need to add the level generator. Let's reset. Rows and columns are going to be 5. The level we are going to use is default level, the sprite renderer, the game piece, and the win piece. Now if we hit play, if there aren't any errors, it should show us our starting level, which was the data we passed. And now what we want to do is start editing our level. So if we pass a different value like 7 cross 7, then we should see a blank. So blank board. So we are seeing a blank board. And next part, we are going to see how we are going to edit our board and save it inside our scriptable object. So let's go to the next part. So in the previous part, we spawned our levels depending on the data. Now we need to spawn our pieces depending on the input we pass, because we need to edit our level. And we cannot just directly visualize what value are we going to pass inside our scriptable object. So we need to visualize it. So that's why I created our level generator whole scene. And we are going to edit the values from here using key bindings. And let's see. So let's go inside our script. So let's go to Visual Studio and let's go to our update function. So if our input dot get key down of space, then we are going to switch from the start piece mode. So a start piece is going to be not a start piece, else we are just going to have the editing mode set to the start piece. So if it is start piece, then we are going to update the start piece. So update start piece. Else we are going to update our game piece. So both of them are going to have different key bindings. So how we are going to update the start piece? So first we need to spawn our start piece, change its size and delete it. And our start piece is always going to be horizontal, so we don't need to do anything much complicated there. So let's move it or shift, and let's update our start piece, spawn game piece and spawn game pieces. So the first thing we are going to have is spawning our game piece. And when we are going to spawn, if input dot get key down of z, then we are going to spawn. So z is for the horizontal and x is for the vertical. Mm, mm, mm. So we need to get the mouse position, and it's going to be equal to camera dot main dot screen to world point input dot mouse position. We'll convert it to a grid pose. So mouse grid pose is going to be new vector to int of mathf dot flow to int flow to why was that flow to int, and we are going to pass the mouse pose dot y comma mathf dot flow to int of mouse pose dot x. So it is going to directly get the grid position, and after we get the grid position, we are going to check if it is not a valid position, then and we need to pass our mouse grid, not mouse grid, mouse pose, then we are going to return. And let's create our private void is valid position and pass a vector to int of pose, and return pose.x is greater than equal to 0 and pose.y is greater than equal to 0 and pose dot x is less than rows and pose dot y is less than our column. So x is for rows and y is for columns. Pretty simple. And after that, instead of void, it needs to be a bool, so it is returning something. And if it is not, then we are going to return if let's put our return inside a bracket. Mm. And after that, if our win piece is not equal to null, then we are just going to directly destroy it. Win piece dot game object, and finally we'll update the value for our level dot win piece, and it's going to be a new piece with id is equals to 0, is vertical is going to be equal to false, and size is going to be equal to 1. Maybe we'll change it, and our start is going to equal to a mouse grid. And after that, we just need to spawn the win. Let's save it. Editor utility. Where is you? Set dirty, and we are going to save our level, and we are going to spawn our win piece. And similarly, we also need to delete it. So input dot get key down of keycode dot c. So c is for the delete, z, x, and c. And if our win piece is not equal to null, then we are going to destroy the win piece dot game object. Our win piece is equals to null, and after that we'll set our level dot win piece is equals to new piece, and we are going to save it. So similarly for spawning, we are going to delete it, set dirty, and we are going to set dirty for our level. And final two functions are going to be increasing and decreasing the size. So if input dot get key down of w, so w is for increasing the size. And where are the two errors? So invalid term, comma, okay. Now there are not any problems, so let's just remove that. And for the we will first check if our win piece is equals to null, then we are going to return. Else, we are going to destroy our win piece dot game object, and our level dot win piece dot size, we are going to increase it, and we are going to spawn it again and save it. So editor utility dot set dirty, and we are going to pass our level. There's autocorrect is screwed up. And similarly, when we press S, we are going to decrease the size. All we have to do is instead of plus plus, we are going to use minus minus. Pretty simple. And before decreasing the size, we need to set it to like the default size minimum value, which is going to be 0. And if we will check if our level dot win piece dot size is equals to 0, then our level dot win piece dot size is going to be equal to 1. So this is going to be for decreasing the size, and spawn spawn spawn. So everything else is going to be similar: spawn horizontal, vertical, increase and decrease the size. So nothing too complicated. And what we can do is we can spawn our win piece. So if we press Z, it is going to spawn. W is going to increase the size. C is going to delete it. Press Z again. Z, Z, Z. So it is always going to update our win piece. We can directly increase its size. And how we spawned our current win piece, we are going to use similar technique to spawn our game pieces. But before doing some changes to our game piece, we'll need to select them. So it is going to be again pretty similar, and our win piece value should be updated. So ID is 0, size is 3. Previously it was something different, but now we are saving it. So let's go to the next part where we spawn our game pieces. So in the previous part, we created methods to change the values of our win piece. Now we need to create similar methods to update our game pieces. So they are going to be stored in a list. So we need to do some list modification. Everything else is going to be completely similar. So let's go to the code and let's go to Visual Studio. And we have our update game piece function ready. And we already created it. When we hit space, we are going to change to our game piece mode instead of the start mode. And it is going to update our game piece. Now, let's first do if input dot any key down. So if any key is not down, then we are just going to return. Else, we are going to get our mouse pose, which is going to be camera dot main dot screen to world point of input dot mouse position. We'll convert it to a mouse pose 2D with a new vector 2 mouse pose dot x mouse pose dot y, and then we are going to convert it to a mouse grid pose or mouse grid, whatever you want to call. And we have the grid position. After getting the grid position, first we are going to check if input dot get key down get mouse button down of 0. Then we are going to select, so raycast hit 2D, it is going to be equal to physics 2D dot raycast from mouse pose 2D to 0. And after that, if not hit or not is a valid position or mouse grid, then we are going to return. Similarly, if not hit dot collider dot transform dot parent dot try get component, and we are going to get our current piece. And if it is not, then it is automatically going to return. And now let's go for spawning our pieces. So if input dot get key down, and the first key we are going to be for the Z, and if is not valid position of our mouse grid, then we are going to return, else we are going to spawn game piece, and we'll pass the true because we are going to spawn a vertical piece. And similarly, it is going to be for the X, but we are going to spawn a horizontal piece, so it is going to be turned false. And let's see how our spawn piece function is going to work. So for spawning, let's create private void spawn piece, and we need to pass the boolean vertical. So spawn game piece, we are going to pass the boolean vertical. So first we are going to get similar values from here, and after that we'll create new spawn piece, which is going to be new piece, and piece dot spawn piece dot id is going to be equal to piece id plus plus. Spawn piece dot is vertical is going to be vertical. Spawn piece dot start is going to be mouse grid, and spawn piece dot size is going to be 1, and level dot pieces dot add spawn piece, and editor utility eut editor utility dot set dirty our level. And before that we are going to spawn the game piece, and we are going to pass our spawn piece as a parameter. And we'll need to create one more function which is going to be our spawn game piece, but it is going to take a piece as a parameter. And level piece temp is going to be instantiate. I mean, we can just directly copy our previous code. Oh, oh. So we can just directly copy it, and we don't need to update the piece. We just need to get the spawn pose, instantiate it, and set up the current piece. So our current piece is going to be our spawn piece. Nothing too complicated. And that was pretty simple, and it is going to spawn our spawn piece. We were never going to use the mouse post 2D, but spawn game piece, okay, we don't need it, so we can just directly delete it. And let's clean up our code. So inside the level piece, nothing. System and system.collections is not needed. Inside the game manager, okay, it is perfectly clean. Level also. And we'll close our game manager, game piece, and the level piece is also not going to be needed. And we are not using current piece. So let's go inside Unity and let's see if we can like spawn any of the pieces. So first we need to change, and then we need to spawn, and then we need to spawn. So this one is vertical and this one is not vertical, so both of them are the pieces. They will be saved. And now we need to create a function for deleting these pieces and changing their sizes. And before changing or deleting, we need to detect if they are present. So depending on the current piece's ID, we are going to update the value inside our scriptable object. And the current pieces ID are stored inside our level piece. So we created one more variable for storing the IDs. So it's going to be a little bit, uh, uh, it is going to be easy, but just a little bit difficult. I mean, lengthy, or just a little bit of more code. So when we are going to delete it, so input dot get key down of C. So we are going to use C for deletion. So first we are going to check if your current piece is null, then we are going to return. And we need to get the remove ID, and our remove ID is equals to -1. And if our current piece is not equal to null, then we can just directly remove it. So we are going to destroy our current piece dot game object, and our current piece is going to be equal to null. And we are going to just directly save it, editor utility dot set dirty, and we need to pass our level. Am I inside? Yeah, so I'm inside Visual Studio, just the window changing. And after that, not after, before that, we need to get the remove ID. So for int I is equals to 0, I less than level dot pieces dot count. Piece is going to be equal to level dot pieces of I. So if level dot pieces of I dot ID is equals to current piece dot ID, then our remove ID is going to be equal to level dot pieces of I dot ID, and we are going to break. So now this ID is going to be for the indexing. So our level remove ID is going to be I. And after we get the remove ID, if our remove ID is not equal to -1, then we are going to just remove it from the list. So level dot pieces dot remove at, and we'll pass the remove id, and it should just remove it. And after that, let's change similarly our sizes. So if input dot get key down, and we are going to pass the w, then we'll first check if current piece is equals to null, then we don't need to do anything. If it is not null, then for int I is equals to 0, level dot pieces dot count. Let's get our piece, and is going to be level dot pieces of I, and if our piece dot id is equals to our current piece dot id, then we are going to do piece dot size plus plus, and level dot pieces of I is going to be equal to piece, and we are going to initialize our current piece by piece, and we can just directly break, and we will save our level. So editor utility dot set dirty, and we'll pass our level as a parameter. And similarly is going to happen with the s. So if we are pressing s, but here instead of plus we are going to use minus, and if our piece dot size is equals to 0, then we are going to set the piece dot size to be 1, and piece dot size is equals to 1, not double equal to. And that should be it, and we should be able to delete and increase the size of our pieces, and before that we'll need to select them, and I think it should be done, and all the values should be saved, and let's hit play. So first thing we are going to check is first press the space bar, then select and then press C. So select and then press C, Z, and then press X. So W and S are not working. Okay, so there's the problem. Yeah, I got it. When we click, 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 click. So let's see where's the problem. So this got, let's press space, let's click this, let's press C. And now let's press Z. Now if we press, okay, we are not saving somewhere, editor utility dot set dirty. We are not saving when we remove it. Is it happening there? Editor utility level dot pieces dot remove remove id w. Doesn't look like that. So our saving is working perfectly fine, but there is some problem. So press space, then click this. Let's press the Z. If we press C, deleted. Okay, so there is a problem with the clicking. Our current piece is not getting clicked. Input dot get mouse button down of 0. Spawn game piece, spawn game piece. Whenever we are spawning, we are also saving. But our current piece is null. It is getting deleted. But if it is not equal to null, so we are getting the remove ID, but it is not getting removed. Pieces dot id is equals to current piece dot id. Spawn game piece, then we are going to return. That should not be the problem. So let's debug it, and we'll be done with that. So let's click, and We can increase and decrease the size, nothing here. Let's click space, and if we click it, it is deletable. If we click it again, it is deletable. If we click it again, it is deletable. Click it again it is deletable, but it did not delete there. So what caused the problem? When we click, we are update the game piece. If current piece is null, remove id is -1. Remove id is I. Level dot pieces dot remove at. Hmm. Current piece is not going to be equal to null. Okay. Level dot pieces, level generator dot level list of piece. So why is it working once and not working again? When we click, we are so let's hit play, and when we first click, uh, it is so when we first clicked, it was getting deleted, but when we clicked again, it did not. If not, try get component out current piece. Hit. Okay. So let's use a debug.log and let's see if we are clicking correctly. Debug.log, and we'll just post something randomly. And what should happen is whenever we click something and let's press the spacebar, so it is not getting detected. That is the problem. Input dot get mouse button down of 0 if hit, if not hit or not valid. If not, if it is not. Hmm. So there is some error with the click. Maybe with the current piece or setting up the current piece. So let's. Okay, now it is clicking. Okay, so now it is clicking. So now we can delete it. Now it did got deleted, but just the first time, not the second time. So let's click this and let's delete this. Let's click this, let's delete this, let's click this, let's delete this, and let's delete this. So it is working once, but it is not working again. And let's click the space bar. Let's click it. And now to delete, we need to press C. So the ID matched. Now if we click again, our current piece is updated and it should get deleted. But our pieces didn't get updated. So C, if current piece is equals to null, return. If remove ID is equals to and let's use a debug.log of current piece dot id debug dot log of remove id. So it should give us some insight. So I just added two debug.logs, and the only problem it's causing is this part. And I think it is getting the whole function is getting returned somewhere. So that's why our W and S is also Maybe some ID problem. It could also happen. So let's hit play and let's hit spacebar and let's click. And now if we press C, then that was the 0 and the 0. So why was it 0 and the 0? Remove ID was 0. Hmm. 0 and negative 1. 0 and negative 1. So what was the 0? ID was 0. Okay, I got the problem. That was the issue with the ID. It didn't get the correct ID. So whenever you spawn a game piece, spawn piece dot ID. What were the two? Current piece dot ID. Our current piece. Okay, okay, I got it. So whenever we are spawning the game piece, there is some issue with the ID. Why did the ID get changed to 0? Let's play again and let's see why it is happening. So it is ID of 0, 1 and 2. Let's hit space and let's delete this. And we have 1, 2 and 3. So 4 got deleted as it was newly added. Let's delete it again. It got the ID of 0. Current piece ID is 0. And the remove ID is negative 1. Obviously, it will not get it. Let's click this again, 0 and negative 1. But it did remove and 0 and negative 1. So where is the problem? So current piece dot ID. Current piece. Out current piece. If we are clicking inside the update game piece, we are outing inside the current game piece. Hmm. Spawning is correct. There is no issue with the spawning. So let's see if there is an issue with the spawning. So if we press space and Z and C, there's not any problem. If we press X and C, X and C, X and C, X and C. Second time the ID is getting changed. Why is it getting changed? Yeah, it will take a bit of time. So spawn game piece has piece ID plus plus. Okay. Every error should be with the piece ID. Let's find. So piece ID plus plus when piece ID is equals to 0. Let's find all the references for our piece ID. Find all references, piece ID plus plus, piece ID piece dot ID, and there are not any other changes. So it should not cause any problem. Piece dot ID and spawn game piece and spawn level. So it should not have any problems with that. Hmm. So it is getting destroyed. So when piece is equals to null, let's debug this. We are clicking the correct game piece. The game piece is getting clicked. It is also getting spawned. These are the true and the false. Is vertical is going to be vertical. Level dot pieces dot add spawn game piece. Our current game piece will be updated. Current piece is updated to a level piece. Now Current piece is equals to null. Current piece is not equal to null. When we press C, W and S, debug.log. I think I got the error. Told you. We also need to update the ID and it's going to be piece.id. So told you minor mistakes and creates major problems, and now I don't think it should cause any problems. Let's edit on a 5 cross 5 grid. So we'll create a fresh grid and it should start with an empty cell, and we can spawn here. We'll increase its size, press the space bar, and spawn Z. We can increase its size and press C. It is going to get deleted. And that was the idea of zero doesn't matter. Spawn X, and we can increase spawn X. We can spawn again, spawn X. Okay, we spawned here. Let's delete and let's delete. So spawn X, we can increase the size, and spawn Z, we can increase the size. So this is our current level, and after uh, like after debugging everything just because of not setting up the ID, we finally got here, and we can check if the level is playable. So we are going to pass our default level, and everything is editable. The only thing we need to check if the level is winnable or not. And yeah, there was one error where its size increased, but vertical size was not increased. So where is the problem? I think we decreased the size 2 and size 1. There's size 3 and size 3. So let's go inside our level generator and don't save. We just need the default level, and let's hit save. Let's press space, and the vertical size, we have increased it, and let's go inside the scenes, and again add our default level, and let's hit play. If the vertical size is 1, then that means there was some problem. It is not 1, then that means it was saved correctly. The game is also finished, and we'll go inside our level generator. We are not going to save it, and the game is finished. So again, because of two minor bugs, we created more problems. Else the game logic was perfectly correct. We can edit all the levels and spawns. The first error was inside our gameplay scene, where we forgot to update that the current piece needs to be removed from the collision matrix, because we have saved all of our matrix and inside our 2 cross 2 grid or whatever you call. So if we collide with ourselves, then we are not going to move. That position needs to be false. So that's why we needed it to be turned false instead of true. So just true and false, true and false. And it took us again 15 to 20 minutes to debug it. That was pretty fast. Sometimes I take days and just leave the project. So happens, and here we forgot to update the ID as we just directly copied the whole code, and we were never able to debug from the original script. Why was that the problem? So that's what happened with packages and using other people code. So understand what the code is doing and what needs to be changed, or it will create major problems. So that was it for this game. If you watched till the end, thank you guys for watching. And if you bought the course on Udemy, thank you for buying it. And see you guys in the next game.